A probe is launched in South Korea after the death toll from a crowd crush in Seoul rises to 154. Politician in the dock, Ilan County Chief Ling Zimiao goes on trial for corruption just weeks before a pivotal election. After 3 decades of planning and construction, Taiwan's longest cross-sea bridge opens to traffic. And a rainbow amid the rain. Taiwan celebrates its 20th Pride Parade. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. We start in South Korea, where a probe has begun into a crush which killed at least 154 people in a nightlife district of Seoul. The country's president has declared a period of national mourning as the victims' families and the city come to terms with the tragedy. James Chater reports.
The streets of Itaewon, a nightlife district of South Korea's capital, eerily quiet. Shops and restaurants in the usually bustling area of Seoul shut. But in the narrow alley where a crowd crush killed at least 154, evidence of the horror remains. Near the scene of the disaster, flowers and drinks left as a tribute to those who lost their lives. At nearby local community service centres, families arrive to learn the fate of missing relatives. Bad news for some, almost too much to bear. South Korea's president has declared a period of national mourning after the disaster. The victims were mostly young people, many in their late teens or early 20s. They were celebrating the first Halloween after COVID restrictions were lifted.
이제 위드 코로나가 돼가지고 저 마스크 없이 야외에서도 활동할 수 있고 이제 코로나 세대라고 불리는 젊은 사람들이 이제 겨우 처음 맞는 축제가 이제 할로윈이 되는 상황인데 거기서 정말 축제가 재앙이 된 상황인 거죠. 이런 상황이 될 거를 사실 누구도 예견할 수 없었고.
Questions are now turning to why such little crowd control was in place. Ahead of the crush, large numbers of police were directed to another part of Seoul to monitor a protest. Itaewon's narrow lanes lined with bars and nightclubs have always drawn huge crowds. And on Saturday night, as people celebrated Halloween, eyewitnesses say loud music drowned out cries for help.
Nobody knew what was happening, so people were still partying. With the emergency happening in front of us, like people there, they were still partying.
In the quiet of day, another question: how this nightlife district will recover.
분위기 자체는 사실 할로윈이 좀 축제 분위기도 하고 좀 많은 사람들이 유흥을 즐기러 오는 거리이기도 한데 오늘 같은 불상사가 일어난 이후니까 아무래도 이전 같은 분위기는 다시 느끼기에는 다소 시간이 걸릴 것 같습니다.
Venues in Itaewon will reopen after the mourning period is over, but the scars of this traumatic incident will take much longer to heal. Asnaya Joe and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
To find out more about how South Korea has responded to the disaster, James Chater spoke with Dudo Wook, a member of the underground music and art scene in Itaewon. His friend was in the area when the crush happened. He drove to the scene to pick her up.
Give us a little bit of background about your experience on the evening of the crush and what happened to you then.
I was in another part of town when I received a text message from a friend about 11:15, and she was at a club right in one of the alleyways where the accident occurred. And she told me by text message that she was witnessing an entire alleyway filled with tens, maybe hundreds of people injured, getting CPR, and it was giving her a panic attack, obviously. And so we agreed to meet on the border of the main Itaewon Street, so I can pick her up and move her away from the area as to avoid further mental trauma to her.
I'd like to play you this clip from an Australian eyewitness. One of his friends died in the crush.
I watched as people filmed and sang and laughed while my friends were dying, along with many other people.
What role do you think social media in particular played in this incident?
I would say for me, the most disturbing element of this whole event has been the reaction of the passersby who witnessed the incident, and their first gut reaction was to pull out their phone, film the incident, post it on their social media, and then move on with their evening, partying. And again, like these disturbing images and videos were passed around freely within minutes, within hours around the globe, triggering secondhand trauma to who knows how many people, especially to people like me, who have lived and worked and indeed partied right in the area where the tragedy had occurred. And I believe this is one of the dehumanizing effects of social media, to create a spectacle out of people's suffering, like casualties and even death.
And what do you think that context around this particular incident in Seoul reveals about South Korea's society at the moment?
I think this event holds a mirror up to Korean society as a whole. And I think somehow almost everyone is complicit in this tragedy, and that there is this dire obsession in consuming other people's misery on both mainstream and social media. It's the very perverse voyeurism of suffering without the humanistic impulse or response to help, or offer help, or at least be respectful of the people who were injured. And of course, on top of that, there was the lack of governmental preemptive measures in avoiding this tragic crush. It's definitely a glaring oversight in protecting their citizens. And it affects, people like me gravely, because it has occurred in the heart of the Itaewon community, to which I'm a member.
Here in Taiwan, officials offered their condolences and expressed shock over the loss of life in Korea. The tragedy has also caused calls for extra scrutiny to be placed on the safety and security of holiday events, which are due to take place in Taiwan later in the year. Louise Watt reports.
Tearful and scared. People leaving the area of the South Korean capital after a crowd surge killed more than 150 people. Young people were crushed in a narrow alley in Seoul's nightlife district of Itaewon. Taipei journalist Yang Qifang was among those celebrating Halloween there on Saturday night.
就是光从地铁站要走一层楼梯上来就花了10分钟，然后都是人挤人，然后也呼吸不太到空气的感觉。
Because of the tight crowds, Yang and her friends left the area at around 10 o'clock, half an hour before the crush happened. Yang is studying Korean in Seoul and says friends from other language schools know some of the people who were killed.
他们班因为有2个人在梨泰院过世了，一个是日本人，一个是泰国人，所以就是其实上课的气氛非常的沉重，就是老师也哭了，这样子没有办法继续上下去。
Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen tweeted in Korean to offer her condolences and prayers. And the country's foreign ministry tweeted its deepest condolences on the loss of life and injuries in the Itaewon incident. It read thoughts and prayers to the families of the victims and heartfelt wishes for a speedy recovery to the wounded. Taiwan grieves with Korea at this difficult time. The leader of Taiwan's main opposition party, the Kuomintang or KMT, said Taiwanese people's hearts are with the Korean people. But he also said that organisers of events in Taiwan, including rallies for November's local elections, should be preparing crowd evacuation plans to ensure public safety. The tragedy in Seoul has shone a spotlight on how Taiwan manages large-scale events. An annual Christmas festival, Christmasland, opens on November the 11th in Taiwan's most populous city, New Taipei. Mayor Ho Yo-i says the event will not go ahead if the city can't protect people's safety.
从警力的分布，在哪一个角落里面如何把安全做到位，甚至包括交通的疏导，以及在沿路的过程当中， 我们都会继续迷于守护市民到欢乐耶诞城的安全。
Officials in other cities in Taiwan also say they'll be sure to make sure large-scale events don't go over capacity and stay safe as South Korea tries to come to terms with its tragedy. Patrick Chen and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's defense ministry says that the development of a domestically made military vehicle is still on schedule. This comes after concerns have been raised about production delays to the vehicle's weapons systems. The CM-34, or Clouded Leopard as it's otherwise known, is said to be one of the country's most advanced armored vehicles. Taiwan has announced to plan to produce almost 300 CM-34s in the next 14 years. At a legislative hearing last Friday, lawmakers from the main opposition Kuomintang recommended freezing part of the military's budget for 2023, citing production delays. But a military spokesperson says the CM-34 completed its initial weapon testing in June. An organization labeled an affiliate of Taiwan's main opposition, Kuomintang, took to the streets in front of the presidential office on Sunday. It says the government is wrong to try and take its assets as part of the country's transitional justice movement. Bing Wang reports.
Chanting and waving signs on the rainy streets of Taipei. Members of the China Youth Corps protest the government's plan to nationalize the group's 61 properties worth $44 million. The China Youth Corps was founded in 1952 by the then ruling Kuomintang, or KMT. Its original purpose was to provide basic military training to youths before they were conscripted. The organization has since shifted to providing recreational services such as language training. In July, the Ill-Gotten Party Asset Settlement Committee ruled that the China Youth Corps is an affiliate of the KMT, which is now Taiwan's largest opposition party, and therefore must return all its assets. The committee has the power to investigate and return assets gained by political parties and their affiliates during Taiwan's decades-long martial law, which lasted from just after World War II to the late 1980s. It was created as part of Taiwan's move towards transitional justice by the now ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP. The group maintains it is not affiliated with the KMT and says it has no choice but to protest.
我们是重要的国家的资产，这样的团体在别的国家一定是非常的疼惜呵护，但是这样的团体在台湾却被党产会
Many political heavyweights came out to show their support for the China Youth Corps, including former Vice President Annette Lu, an ex-member of the DPP, and former President Ma Ying-jeou from the KMT.
这个国家怎么回事了？连救国团都要走上街头了，因为官逼民反嘛，对不对啊？救国团忍无可忍嘛。
The China Youth Corps says it does not oppose transitional justice and agrees victims of state violence during martial law deserve justice. But it says it objects to having its assets taken away because of apparent affiliation with the KMT. It argues instead that it already belongs to the state, and these members are making their voices heard on the streets. James Rayner and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
The leader of one of Taiwan's northern counties is facing trial for corruption, less than 4 weeks before locals vote on whether to re-elect her. Prosecutors say Yilan County Chief Ling Zimiao took millions of dollars from shady land deals and laundered some of the money through friends' bank accounts. The trial, which began on Monday, comes as Lin battles to stay in office ahead of nationwide local elections in late November. She's the local candidate for Taiwan's main opposition party, the Kuomintang. Lin insists that she is innocent. An anonymous hacker has posted the personal data of almost 200,000 Taiwanese people to an online data breach forum. The data seemingly comes from Taiwan's household registration system and includes people's names, addresses, and ID numbers. Most of the data is from the northeastern county of Yilan. Taiwan's Interior Minister says the formatting of the leaked data proves it does not come from the household registration system. But privacy experts suggest multiple data sets have likely been breached.
应该是跟某个系统在做串接的过程里面有一些漏洞，那以至于说资料被外接出去，显现到说我们国家另外的一个问题，很多治安委外的厂商来讲，资讯安全就没有那么样子的重视。
Housing transactions in Taiwan have hit their lowest point since February. Government figures show that less than 24,000 units were bought and sold in September, marking 6 straight months of slowing sales. Analysts say a rise in global interest rates has prospective home buyers rethinking their plans. The slowdown has caused housing transactions to fall 15% year on year, but the government is unlikely to intervene.
房市稳才是政府最大的期待。当然，如果往下的调整，它其实还在合理的范围内，我觉得就让它调整吧。其实对国家是好的。
Taiwan's longest sea bridge opened to traffic on Sunday. The bridge will cut travel time significantly for motorists between the two main islands of outlying Jinmen County. Leslie Liao has the details.
Residents of Taiwan's outlying Jinmen County gathered on Sunday afternoon to mark a historic occasion. It's the opening of the Jinmen Bridge, a moment that's been 30 years in the making. The 5.4-kilometer span is Taiwan's largest sea bridge and connects the county's two main islands, Jinmen and Lieyu. In the past, the only way motorists could travel between the two was by a 20-minute ferry ride. Boats run every 30 minutes and are at the mercy of weather conditions. The bridge cuts transit time to just 5 minutes, and it will be far more reliable than the alternative route. Furthermore, it lowers the risk of living for people residing on the smaller Lieyu Island.
猎屿人最直接影响的就是他们就医、就学、就业这样的往返变得很便利嘛，就是很多人就不用再离乡背井，就可以住在他们猎屿的小金门的家中。
The project was conceptualized as early as 3 decades ago, but it didn't get approval until 2010. Work started in 2012, but the project ran into a series of hiccups. There were bidding controversies, contractor issues, and technical challenges. Jinmen Bridge saw 4 contractors over the duration of its construction. Then, someone fishing under the bridge took these photos and posted them online. The pictures show parts of the bridge's concrete exterior eroded, exposing the steel rebar within. This further delayed the Jinmen Bridge's completion.
那现在民众最大的疑虑是说，镂空砖带经过那么长时间的这个海风吹拂，钢筋会不会锈蚀？对不对？那未来大桥的这个结构会不会有相干道安的疑虑？
经过检视确认之后呢，我们确认的钢筋主要是钢筋的部分有没有产生严重的锈蚀？混凝土的局部的这样子的一个所谓蜂窝瑕疵呢，是对于桥梁整个体结构是没有影响的。
For a while, locals cynically referred to the Jinmen Bridge as a political tool. It seemed that the project was going nowhere and that it would only come up during election years when candidates were trying to win public support. But after nearly 30 years of work, locals can finally put those frustrations to rest. Jinmen Bridge is finally open to traffic. Since its inception, the project has outlasted 4 presidents and 5 county magistrates. Today, the Jinmen Bridge is no longer a political bargaining chip, nor is it a bridge to nowhere. It's a bridge that will potentially save lives and will most definitely make life much easier for Jinmen residents. Damon Lin and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's Weather Bureau on Monday issued a torrential rain advisory for Taipei and other parts of northern and eastern Taiwan. That comes after heavy rain caused landslides and flooding. Nanao Township in Yilan County, northeastern Taiwan, recorded more than a meter of rain in less than 2 days. The deluge, brought by the combined effect of nearby tropical storm Nalgai and a northeast monsoon, has closed roads and schools in eastern counties. The Central Weather Bureau says the rain is likely to continue all week. Taiwan held its 20th annual Pride Parade on Saturday. Despite poor weather brought on by tropical storm Nalgai, over 100,000 people took part. Our reporter Yvonne Yang was there.
It's the 20th Taiwan Pride Parade. Although it's raining, it has been raining since the day before, you can see the huge number of people who turn out for this event.
It's my first time in a Pride Parade in Taipei, but I often go to a Pride Parade in Kiev. We should be in solidarity with everybody who is discriminated and who is fighting, and everybody whose rights are affected. We are from Ukraine and our country is in war right now. Thousands of people are dying, and we stand in solidarity here today with everybody who is discriminated, with everybody whose life is under threat.
The vibe is electrifying, but can you imagine what was it like when it started 20 years ago?
因为我是第一届就参加游行，然后第一届其实是800人，那其实我觉得到现在台湾同志游行20年，我们从800人走到10几万人，在刚开始，其实我觉得大家台湾社会对于同志或者是性别平等的这样的主题，其实还是不那么容易接纳，特别是多元性别的主题。
Almost 20 years later, in 2018, Taiwan became the first country in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage. But is it enough?
Even though same-sex marriage is legalized, it's actually not same-sex marriage. So the same-sex marriage and heterosexual marriage have very different rights. For example, a same-sex couple cannot access the assisted reproductive technology in Taiwan. They cannot co-adopt a child that is not biologically related to either of them. And cross-national couples, same-sex couple cannot get married if the foreign partner is from a country where same-sex marriage is not legalized. Transgender rights and rights of non-binary people are still very, very lacking.
While there's still room for improvement, Taiwan is still leading the way in Asia for LGBTQ rights. Kamashi and Yvonne Yang for TaiwanPlus.
It's the end of October, which means Halloween is here again. In Taipei, a local amusement center organized an event for thousands of local children to enjoy the spirit of the ghostly festivities. Bing Wang was there.
These kids are in line to celebrate a spooky holiday. They're enjoying a 2-day Halloween celebration, which has been organized by the Taipei Children's Amusement Park Center. In total, almost 15,000 people put on their costumes and joined in on the festivities.
喜欢。
为什么？
因为有很多糖果。喜欢。因为可以扮装。功夫僵尸。
The children played on banana boats, Ferris wheels, and merry-go-rounds. In the end, they all received candy and goodie bags to take home. However, the specter of COVID-19 still looms. The event was downsized last year because of strict pandemic guidelines. While most restrictions have been lifted, certain measures are still in place. There are still tens of thousands of COVID cases here in Taiwan, and masking is still required. But that's not stopping anyone from enjoying Halloween festivities. In fact, this year, this event has drawn the most participants ever.
因为疫情，去年是比较严重嘛，人潮比较少。那今年的话，已经疫情慢慢回稳了嘛，所以那个人潮都有回来。像昨天就有1万多人。
Organizers of the event made sure to follow Taiwan's new guidelines and to keep the events both fun and safe for the children.
很好玩，就是每一关都有每一关的特色，然后就会有一些奖品、一些礼物，小朋友玩得很开心。
有什么奖品？
它有软糖啊，然后益生菌啊，还有那种燕麦棒，都是对小朋友蛮健康的东西。
Taiwan is not usually known for its extravagant Halloween celebrations, but events such as this show that October 31st is becoming a bigger deal every year, and is seeing more and more people getting into the Halloween spirit. Andy Xue and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
The animals at Taipei Zoo also celebrated Halloween with a pumpkin feast. Zookeepers carved the fruits and stuffed them with other treats for the animals to enjoy. The capybaras and tapirs were not spooked by this festive trick and jumped straight for the food inside. As for the chimpanzees, well, they treated themselves to a handful of pumpkin. Preparations began the week before Halloween. The festivities are part of the zoo's ongoing celebration of its 108th birthday. A new BBC report says 3 Taiwanese films have been blocked in Hong Kong. The movies The Lucky Woman, Bluffing, and Quarantini had been invited to show in a Chinese territory. Officials there wanted parts of the films to be cut in accordance with the territory's national security law. Organizers spoke to the directors, who decided not to show them instead. One director said their movie didn't touch on any sensitive topics and that they don't understand why changes were required. A Taiwanese short film similarly blocked last year. Taiwan has a new badminton champion.
He lands it this time.
Guo Guanling has claimed the top spot at this year's BWF World Junior Championships held in Spain. The 18-year-old beat his Indian opponent in 2 straight sets. He's the only second Taiwanese competitor to claim the men's title in the event's history. Guo was also part of the team event last week, which captured silver, Taiwan's best performance ever. Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. Finally today, we'll leave you with images of the beautiful view of Lake Como, which is a popular spot in Italy for vacation. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.